EDU 604, Diversity Issues in the 21st Century Education by Jason Dake, Post University. Chapter 9, Schooling Causes of the Achievement Gap, School Culture, Structure, and Support. Murphy 2010 offers an explanation on both positive and negative school climates. Positive school climates help students cope with social emotional issues and develop resiliency. Negativity has detrimental effects on students' psychological and social emotional well-being, which lead to mental health problems. School climates are based on patterns of students, parents, and school personnel's experience of school life. School climates reflect norms, goals, values, interpersonal relationships, teaching and learning practices, and organizational structures. School climates also offer positive climates which foster youth development and learning necessary for a productive, contributing, and satisfying life in a democratic society. School climates also have a differential influence on Black and white students. School culture can be defined as the quality and character of the life of the school, and can also be described as the environment that affects the behavior of the entire school community. There are some negative issues that can be addressed in which children with the lowest achievement may be the most distant, both socially and culturally. For misplaced culture, impoverished students may have handicaps because of the backgrounds differing in standards for speech, conduct, support, cultural history, and ethnic traditions, differing from those commonly stressed in public schools. Students of racial, ethnic, and social class-based cultural differences produce incompatibilities with school culture. Students from poor and racial/ethnic minority background experience gaps between home and school, while their middle-class white peers experience a more seamless connection between the two. Murphy 2010 explains the absence of cultural adaptive schools and culturally responsive classrooms is regularly surfaced as a problem and one often linked to the achievement gap. In analysis, there are attempts to understand why there is a persistent failure of many African American students, and that is to study the link between the school performance and students' cultural orientations. Link number 1 discusses the distinct groups often possess distinct cultures, or at least cultures that have unique elements, and that these cultures are significant. Link number 2 is the white middle-class families and African American working class and poor families have different cultures. Link number 3 is schools have their own cultures, and that the white middle-class culture is the culture that has been hardwired into public education. Link number 4 is there is a discontinuity between cultures that learners bring to the school and the culture of the school, a disconnect between students who come from different cultures and family conditions and the traditional school structure and expectations. Link number 5, schools are not especially adept in dealing with this condition. And link number 6, this cultural conflict and the resultant school actions dumb down student learning. Murphy 2010 says we must address non-supportive learning environments in which African American students are more likely to report that they feel unsafe in their schools and that their learning experience is disrupted by other students. Also, minority students are less likely than white students to attend schools with a favorable disciplinary climate and facilities in good repair. Minority parents are more likely to report concerns about safety in the schools their children attend. And schools in poor neighborhoods generally have higher levels of disorder, disruption, and fear, all of which impede the learning of low-income students. It is important as educators that we offer a caring environment with safety and discipline. Research over the last 30 years informs us that students are socially and academically advantaged when they attend schools defined by safe and orderly learning environments. Studies show that students who feel their teachers encourage them are more committed to learning and more successful academically. Murphy 2010 explains that the pathway between school climate and achievement gaps can be learned. Through the context of the achievement gaps, educators must understand the low achievement and underachievement may be due to the student's educational attitudes, perceptions, and subsequent behaviors. Behavioral and affective disengagement from class and school presents a problem among minority students from low-income homes. Substantial evidence associates status characteristics with risk behavior. Educators must re-examine the cultures of schools by rebuilding trust with the students, eliminating cultural misunderstandings, conquering the stereotype threat, eliminating disidentification of minorities with the dominant cultural values of schooling in general, establishing the importance of academic achievement by overcoming the systemic rejection of school and academics by African American students, and rebuilding a protective process through which the motivation to achieve improves and reverses the conceptions of overall low self-worth that gradually separates the students from performance in schools. Additional improvements are overcoming the student's perception that their prospects of succeeding in school are small, that academic success is not a promising basis for developing or maintaining their self-esteem, eliminating unhealthy learning climates and depressed achievements, and format an oppositional culture, a more active response than simply withdrawing from school. And recognizing that pressures against academic achievement experienced by Black students may not originate exclusively with their peers. They may also come from some adults in the African American community, including their parents. As educators, we must offer structure and support. The larger context of schooling is defined by various structures and systems of support that either amplify differences between African American children and low-income youngsters or help narrow those learning differentials. Simplified measures can be parental choice, heightened accountability measures, additional professional development for teachers, and so forth may contribute to narrowing social class and racial achievement gaps. More complex measures can affect structure and support, such as financial resources. The way funding is allocated can affect student achievement. It is important to know whether school dollars tend to be invested differently because of the social, economic, or racial ethnic status of students, because such variations in the deployment of school resources, if they exist, could be a source of differences in group achievement patterns. There is a clear evidence that schools with a substantial white presence get more resources of the sort that matter to student achievement. High poverty schools tend to have fewer financial and human resources than low poverty schools. Additional complex measures would be district, school, and class size. Other things equal, larger schools and larger districts do slightly worse. Poverty has a negative impact on student achievement, but smaller schools can mitigate or even minimize that negative impact. Large class sizes, especially for inner-city minority students, are often cited as exacerbating the achievement gap. Murphy 2010 tells us children with families with more economic need attend schools with larger kindergarten classes. The strongest associations here refer to location. Compared to the suburbs, children attending schools in urban areas are in much larger kindergarten classes, whereas children in schools in medium cities and rural areas are in smaller classes. There are several ways that we can overcome achievement gaps. The first way is parent involvement. The academic achievement gap was partially explained by differences in the levels and effects of parent involvement. Family and community involvement in schools is viewed as particularly important and urgent for poor and minority students. A second opportunity for overcoming achievement gaps would be family and student mobility. Mobility rates vary widely by race and economic status, and student mobility, that is, how frequently children change schools, is related to socioeconomic status and can result in a myriad of problems in school. We found that significant negative impacts of mobility on test scores, and data offers evidence that geographic mobility is an adversive influence on student achievement. Students with stable attendance records may also be academically impaired if they attend schools with high mobile populations. The third opportunity for overcoming achievement gaps would be the composition of schools and classes. Researchers have long recognized that the compositional characteristics of their school's student body can affect individual students' achievements. The school factor most correlated with variations in standardized test scores was the composition of the student body. The characteristics of students' peers were more closely associated with variations in the students' test scores than differences in teacher characteristics, school facilities, or the curriculum. Racial context of the school may be important for the academic socialization and achievement of young children. And the family structure prevailing in school appears to make more of a difference for students than their own family backgrounds. In conclusion, this chapter concludes the analysis of the causes of achievement gaps in our schools. These processes are the ways in which school culture and the structures and support systems in schools amplify or at least fail to reduce pattern learning differentials by race and social class. This project was brought to you by Murphy 2010, The Educator's Handbook for Understanding and Closing Achievement Gaps, and Wong, Hayes, Kennedy, Tucker, and Dudovitz 2019, The Social Economics of Adolescent Behavior and Measuring the Behavioral Culture of Schools.